What we really end up needing, though, is reform of the budget process. The end of this current shutdown will likely be a short-term continuing resolution, but it won't fix the underlying problems. The real solution is reforming the budget process itself, enacting sustainable budgeting that restores fiscal discipline, protecting taxpayers with less government spending, and forcing Washington to live within its means. Hello, welcome to this week's economy. I'm your host, Dr. Vance Ginn. Thank you for joining me again today. Again, it's always a pleasure to have you here. We're still in the middle of a government shutdown. Who knows when that's going to end? But we've got a lot more to talk about today, so let's get to it. As of this recording, forecasts suggest this could become the longest federal government shutdown in modern American history. In Washington, tensions are high over mass layoffs and congressional gridlock. Yet, across much of the country, it's business as usual, aside from the 22 states sliding toward recession and revising revenue forecast amid tariff-driven uncertainty. Add in speculation about the Federal Reserve's next rate cut, and the picture becomes even more unsettled. In this episode of This Week's Economy, I'm going to break down the latest developments from the shutdown to potential interest rate cuts and explore solutions rooted in sound, time-tested economic principles. Remember, you can catch the full episode on YouTube, Apple Podcast, or Spotify, and visit my website, vanceginn.com, for more information. So let's get into it, all right? Number one, shutdown, showdowns, add layoffs. In the news, the federal government shutdown continues as Congress remains deadlocked on a funding deal. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson predicts it could become one of the longest in U.S. history. President Trump has sought to use the moment to trim federal programs and reduce the workforce, with about 4,200 employees across at least 7 agencies receiving reduction in force notices, also known as RIFs. However, a federal judge has temporarily blocked the layoffs, ruling the move unlawful. My take on this is that what is the real shutdown cause? This shutdown is a bipartisan symptom of Washington's addiction to chaos, marked by continuing resolutions, bloated omnibus bills, and constant brinkmanship. The real disease is runaway government spending that is a bipartisan problem. The national debt has topped $37 trillion, annual deficits approach $2 trillion, and Congress hasn't passed a full budget on time since 1997. Instead, lawmakers rely on short-term patches and massive, unread spending bills. That's fiscal malpractice. What we've really got to do is end government waste. That's a good stepping part of this. It's encouraging to see the administration take steps toward fiscal responsibility by targeting wasteful programs and bureaucratic bloat. The proposed layoffs move President Trump closer to his goal of downsizing or even closing the Department of Education, returning education decisions to the states or to the people where it really belongs. However, these layoffs remain in limbo and may not ultimately take effect. What we really end up needing, though, is reform of the budget process. The end of this current shutdown will likely be a short-term continuing resolution, but it won't fix the underlying problems. The real solution is reforming the budget process itself, enacting sustainable budgeting that restores fiscal discipline, protecting taxpayers with less government spending, and forcing Washington to live within its means. I discussed this and more on how to fix America's fiscal discipline crisis in more detail in my recent week of This Week's Economy, so be sure to check that out in the show notes page at vanceginn.substack.com. Number two, will the Fed cut rates? In the news, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell signaled that another interest rate cut is likely later this month, citing growing weakening in the labor market, even as inflation remains stubborn. He emphasized the Fed's balancing act between avoiding premature cuts that could reignite inflation and delaying too long, which could deepen job losses. Powell also suggested that the Fed is nearing the end of its balance sheet reduction after shrinking its pandemic-era assets holding from nearly $9 trillion to about $6.6 trillion today. My take is that we've got to look at the hidden cost of manipulated rates by the Fed. The Fed's dual mandate of price stability and maximum employment has turned into a political slogan. Strip it back to what it should be, protecting the value of the currency, only inflation. The Fed's role, while it exists, should be limited to a lender of last resort, not deciding what a 30-year mortgage should cost. If inflation is a hidden tax, then manipulated interest rates are hidden subsidies, rewarding today's borrowers at the expense of tomorrow's savers. Price distortion and uncertainty, they drive the day. Why do we accept 12 officials setting the most important price on capitalism? The price of money itself, the price of credit. Prices are signals, not levers. They reflect scarcity, preferences, and risk. Suppress them, and you suppress the information markets need to function. It's time to stop turning every FOMC meeting into a global guessing game. Publish a simple operating framework, stick to it, and let market price risk on fundamentals, not personalities. We've also got to solve the Fed's problem. The real fix is a smaller, if any, influence on markets by the Fed with freer markets. Shrink the Fed's bloated balance sheet, let interest rates emerge from competition among lenders and borrowers, where dispersed knowledge and millions of individual decisions will always beat centralized planning from Washington. I recently wrote about the Fed's political theater and why it's time to bring transparency over theatrics. In my Substack post, Moran confirmed, Cook stays, why the Fed's political theater shows markets should set rates. Number 4, CFPB's Section 1033 rule is government overreach in disguise. In the news, the CFPB's open banking rule under Section 1033 of the Dodd-Frank Act is reigniting debate. In the Washington Examiner, Alliance Defending Freedom founder Alan Sears argued the rule protects religious liberty by ensuring churches and nonprofits can also access fintech promotions or information and major banks allegedly block. But Taxpayer Protection Alliance's David McGarry countered that the rule imposes federal mandates, strips financial institution of property rights, and effectively sets the price of access to data infrastructure at zero. A hidden price control, y'all. The Trump administration's CFPB has paused litigation and reopened rule making. My take on this is that this is a hidden price control. Section 1033 compels banks to give fintechs access to their systems at a government-set price of $0. That's not a consumer empowerment. It's subsidy for competitors. Government shouldn't dictate how private infrastructure is shared. You also think about what CFB shouldn't be in control over: your data. Faith-based and nonprofit groups deserve protection from financial discrimination, but expanding the CFPB's reach isn't the answer. Handing this rogue agency more power and information and financial data pipelines invites more regulatory abuse and central control, not less. The real threat here is government pressure. Banks didn't suddenly debank conservatives or churches on their own. Many were pressured by the Biden administration to cut ties with disfavored groups. That's the real scandal. The fix isn't giving Washington more power through Section 1033. It's removing its grip on the market altogether. Let competition, not bureaucrats, hold financial institutions accountable. I recently wrote an explainer on Section 1033 and why this rule is so harmful. You can check it out at Stop Forced Open Banking, Reject the CFPB's Section 1033 Chopra Rule. Number 5, AI antitrust and power demand. In the news, Google's antitrust battle could redefine how competition law applies to artificial intelligence, as regulators argue its dominance in data gives it an unfair advantage in shaping the market. Meanwhile, the AI boom is driving massive energy demand, so much so that some data centers are now building their own power plants to keep up, reshaping both technology in general and energy policy debates. My take on this is that antitrust impacts AI. America's tech sector should be a global engine of innovation and opportunity, leading the AI revolution. Instead, years of government overreach under the Biden administration stalled progress, prioritizing bureaucratic control over consumer benefit and fueling uncertainty. These antitrust lawsuits didn't promote competition. They discouraged investment and weakened America's competitive edge in global markets. What we need to do is roll back antitrust overreach. To secure America's leadership in technology, policymakers must roll back a Biden-era antitrust excesses, confirm regulators who uphold the consumer welfare standard, and resist foreign regulatory pressure. A stable, pro-growth environment, not government micromanagement, will keep America at the forefront of AI innovation. Energy to power AI is also what we're seeing. AI's future depends on reliable, affordable energy. Instead of regulating electricity use or distorting markets with subsidies, states should clear barriers to energy production and innovation. Many AI firms aren't just consuming power, they're investing in new generation capacity and even supplying excess electricity back to the grid. I had a related piece to this from Net Choice on how the Trump administration can reverse the damage from Biden's misguided antitrust policies that you don't want to miss. Number 6, state property tax relief revolution. In the news, Florida lawmakers are weighing a proposal to give eligible homeowners a $1,000 annual rebate for 5 years to ease rising property tax bills. A new report from the James Madison Institute that I co-authored with Joseph Johns outlines reform options as local taxes top $55 billion and grow faster than population and inflation. The issue extends beyond Florida. States like Texas are pursuing property tax relief as well. Sources, you can look at those as well that I have in the show notes page. But my take on this is that the burden of property taxes must be relieved and ultimately ended. Property taxes function like a recurring wealth tax, penalizing home ownership, raising rents, and discouraging investment. Compare with nearby states like Alabama and Tennessee, Florida's effective property tax rates are higher despite its strong overall tax competitiveness. Rapid population growth and rising housing costs create a rare opportunity for reform, one of the most distortionary taxes in any system. The real issue is government spending. Without strict spending limits that tie spending growth to population plus inflation, less than that, and any tax relief will be short-lived. Nearly half of Florida's school funding, $13.7 billion of $29.5 billion, comes from property taxes, underscoring the need for long-term structural reform other than temporary fixes. What are the options on the table? Well, the goal should be to strengthen homeownership, improve transparency, and ensures Florida's tax system supports prosperity while funding limited government. Policy options include surplus-driven buy-downs, incremental relief, sales tax swaps, hybrid approaches, eliminating school millages, and other transfer taxes to offset reductions. To relate to this, read my new report from the James Madison Institute that I'll have in the show notes page as well. That's what I have for you today. Thanks for joining me in this episode of This Week's Economy. For more insights, visit vanceginn.com and get even a greater value with a paid subscription to my Substack newsletter at vanceginn.substack.com. Until next time, folks, God bless you and let people prosper.